Welcome back inside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. Chris, I feel like I'm in foreign territory, a two-game losing streak, and shockingly, when we were standing here inside Gillette last week at this time, I don't think either one of us realistically expected the Eagles to more or less give the Patriots a game, let alone actually upset and beat the Patriots 35-28. Patriots are in a bit of a tailspin now, and they don't want it to go to 3 games, something that really never happens. What is the key to getting everything together and getting the focus back on going down to Houston and taking care of business?
Well, one of the things you need to do is get a quick start. I think that when you look at these two teams, the Patriots and the Texans, and the way they match up, Patriots traditionally come out very strong. They are one of the league leaders when it comes to first quarter points. The other side of the coin is the Texans often struggle offensively early in the game. That's one of the things. Patriots can come out early, set the tone, put 7 points, 14 points, whatever on the board with a very strong start. One of the things that we've talked about quite frequently with this team, New England team right now, they need to run the ball. And I think that there are going to be opportunities for them to run the ball. You're going up against a Houston defense that's really good when it comes to slowing the pass, not so much when it comes to the run. We talked last week about wanting to play tough physical football. One of the hallmarks of tough physical football is an ability to run the ball. You have to get that running game going between now and the postseason if you want this offense to be more than one-dimensional. When the offense is one-dimensional, it's a really good dimension. One of the best dimensions in the league, this passing game, when you get everybody healthy. But when you go into the postseason, you're going to have situations where you're going to need that running game to start clicking. Patriots need to get after that sooner rather than later. This is a good week to do it.
Why is Josh McDaniels not sticking with the run? I think, in talking to fans on Twitter or just talking to them at a coffee shop, they're like, Brandon Bolden even gets to the outside against the Eagles on Sunday afternoon. Looks like, he's making 4 or 5, 6 yards a clip. LeGarrette Blount is really doing a good job between the tackles, finding holes, and I think he's a lot more versatile in between the tackles and mobile than we give him credit for. James White hasn't been really running a lot. He's been catching the ball out of the backfield. I think a very productive receiver. But the question is, why doesn't McDaniels go more to the run, take the pressure off Brady, and attack defenses that way?
I think the last 2 games are really stick out to me when you talk about getting away from the run. Denver, the run defense was not as good as the pass defense. They ran the ball once in the fourth quarter in overtime. They started out really strong, to my mind, against the Eagles. They were running the ball consistently, getting good yardage early. After a couple of drives, they went away from it. And I think some of that, this whole thing kind of spun out of control after that botched drop kick. And, you can make of it what you want to. But at the same time, I think that was one of the turning points of the game. I don't know why the Patriots don't run the ball more than they do. I don't know if it's whether or not they do not trust their running backs, whether or not they are afraid of executing across the board, or it's an offensive line problem. Maybe it's all three. All three of them figure into it. But at the same time, again, like I said before, this team needs to be able to run the ball and run the ball consistently when the postseason rolls around, and they need to get it going. They've never been overwhelming when it comes to running the ball. I'm not talking about a team that needs to put up 200 yards rushing, but you need to get to where you need to be between now and the postseason if you want a fully functioning offense.
2 things. Tom Brady's had 35 or 40 hits over the last 3 games, and secondly, everybody and their brother knows that if you're going to win in January, whether it's here, Denver, Cincinnati, you're going to need a running game, and especially if the weather gets bad. And it just would seem to me that the Patriots put more of an emphasis on the run. Now, let's shift focus, shift gears a little bit, and talk about what Bill Belichick spoke on here Wednesday in Gillette Stadium, and that is a coming home week, sort of, even though the Patriots are going on the road to Houston, it is a reunion week. Mm-hmm. Vince Wilfork, Brian Hoyer, Mike Vrabel as a coach, and I know you're talking about that, and even Bill O'Brien. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of familiar faces on that Houston staff, Romeo Crennel, but it really isn't the same system down there that we saw them work on here in New England. Why is that?
Well, I think that you have to tweak it to suit the personnel. And I think that, and Bill O'Brien has talked about this before, look, he would love to have Tom Brady down there. At the same time, you don't have Tom Brady, you have Brian Hoyer, so you have to make the adjustments. I think when they have their full complement of players in Houston, they do a pretty good job executing. Arian Foster is a good back, 1,000-yard guy. They have DeAndre Hopkins, who's really started to come on this year. I think he's done a really good job taking over for Andre Johnson and getting a lot of those targets and doing a good job keeping the chains moving. But again, at the end of the day, you can only do so much if you have Brian Hoyer under center as opposed to Tom Brady. What they do, their big emphasis is on protecting the football, making smart decisions. And so far, when he started this year, I think Brian Hoyer has done a good job. They do have some offensive inconsistencies, again, particularly with no Arian Foster. They've struggled to run the ball, but they do well when it comes to biting off small chunks of yards at a time in the passing game. Hopkins, that being said, Hopkins is the kind of guy who could beat you on all three levels. I am fascinated to see this week the matchup between DeAndre Hopkins and Malcolm Butler. I think it's going to be fantastic.
All right, everybody and their brother is going to be talking about one player on the defensive side of the ball for the Texans this week, especially given the problems that the Patriots' offensive line has had of late protecting Tom Brady, and that is, of course, is J.J. Watt. Bill Belichick, not surprisingly, put him in the class of Lawrence Taylor this week here on Wednesday. And my question for you, Chris, is Josh McDaniels hinted at double teams for J.J. Watt. Belichick acknowledged Wednesday teams are double teaming, shifting their offensive lines to shade toward Watt. How do the Patriots go about managing J.J. Watt and making sure the rest of their defense, their playmakers, Whitney Marsalis for one, a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, don't kill him?
Yeah, I think first of all, obviously the focus is on Watt, and again, he's an interior guy, and so that presents some sort of challenges. A lot of the great rushers that the Patriots have faced over the course of the 2015 season have been edge guys. He's unique in the fact that he comes up the middle. He's going to be one of those guys who's going to make things very uncomfortable for Tom Brady when it comes to stepping into a throw. I think when you talk about protection, you need to have multiple guys, as you mentioned. The other thing you have to make sure is you have to have a guy in your back pocket in the backfield, whether that's James White, whether that's Brandon Bolden, LeGarrette Blount, whoever the case may be. We've seen Shaq Mason back there. We've seen Gronk start in the backfield on occasion before he's motioned out. So you need to put not only a plan A in place, you need to put a plan B in place as well to, at the very least, maybe not get a full-on hit on J.J. Watt, maybe to slow him down a little bit. What you want to do to be able to keep those chains moving in the passing game. Again, we always talk about it. Rhythm, tempo, tempo, tempo. The focus has to be on getting the ball out as fast as possible. The guys, Keyshawn Martin, Danny Amendola, we don't think that Gronk or Edelman are going to play, but it's going to be about getting the ball out as fast as possible to do everything you can do to minimize that pass rush.
How does Vince Wilfork look to you down in Houston this year?
I think he's one of those guys who, look, this is not, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is Vince of 2010, but at the same time, Vince is one of those guys who does very well feeding off of J.J. Watt. You talked about some of the other guys they have in that front seven. They're a really good complementary defensive front in that Watt will command much of the attention, and we'll see this on Sunday. And a lot of those guys do a really good job taking advantage of the fact that there is so much attention paid to Watt. It's one of the really impressive things about that front seven. Wilfork is one of those guys. When Wilfork has been at his best this year, he's been able to get singled. He's been able to be singled up because he's been playing next to Watt. And when he's done that, more often than not, he's made some big plays. Again, he's not the Vince Wilfork of 2010, 2011. He's not the all-pro Pro Bowler, but I think he's done very well serving a complementary role for that Houston defense this year.
Walking into Gillette Stadium here this morning on Wednesday, looked up on the scoreboard, and the score from last Sunday is still up there. Eagles 35 and the Patriots 28. Is that a message?
I wouldn't be surprised. I know that we've seen it in the past where it's been, both positive and negative. It's still been up there when we've come back in, but I don't think it's a coincidence. I'll put it that way. That was a shocking loss for New England in a lot of ways, and I don't want to go too far back and reference it, but it's fascinating to see over the years how this Patriots team, I'm going back now a dozen or so years, how they've responded to late season losses. And in my experience, it's either been a slingshot for them into the postseason, into postseason success. Last year, we've referenced this before on a handful of occasions, the Packers loss in Green Bay. Right. They were able to kind of take that and use that to their advantage and tighten up some of the things they needed to tighten up on both sides of the ball and get where they needed to be when the postseason rolled around. I'm going to be fascinated to see how this Patriots team responds to these back-to-back losses, because the last time this Patriots team lost 3 in a row was 2002. That's a long, long time ago. 3-game losing streaks around here are few and far between. I think that's one of the reasons why the Patriots will find a way this week against Houston.
Maybe hindsight will prove me wrong, but this feels much different than last year did. When they went up to Green Bay, they lost to a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback and a Super Bowl MVP caliber quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and there's no shame in losing the way they did in Green Bay. But I felt there was shame here on Sunday, up 14-0 against a horrific Eagles team that still I don't think is going to get it together in time to make a playoff run. And they let one slip away that you never see them let slip away.
Especially at this time of year. I think that's an even larger point here. I think the one thing you can take away, and we discussed this before, if you're a Patriots fan, if you want to be an optimist, a glasses half full guy, is that there were 3 fluky plays that dominated this game. And then you look on the other side of the ball, you didn't have Edelman, you didn't have Gronkowski, you had Amendola coming back. You weren't at full strength offensively, you weren't at full strength defensively, quite frankly, with no Dante Hightower. But it took 3 weird fluky plays to be able to beat the Patriots in that fashion. So I'm not discounting it, but at the same time, it's not like there's all of a sudden a template out there in terms of how to beat the Patriots. You run back a 99-yard interception return and you take advantage of 2 special teams miscues. I said this before, I wrote this earlier in the week, that the last time the Patriots had this kind of special teams breakdown across the board was 2010. So I think they take every 5 years. But again, I want to see how all 3 phases respond this week. Offense, defense, and in particular special teams after what happened last week against the Eagles.
Let's say the Patriots do as good a job as the Bills did on Sunday in Buffalo when the Texans almost came from behind and beat them. Let's say the Patriots do a good job managing J.J. Watt. They win the game Sunday night?
Yeah, they do. I think that's really the key. I don't think you can go into this game with the same sort of game plan that you had against the Eagles and hope to win because you look at this Patriots team, and again, going back to that Philly game, more often than not, they're prepared. You very rarely see a Patriots team that just doesn't execute in big moments, and they weren't able to execute. And I have to imagine that, combined with the score on the scoreboard back of us still being up there, they're being reminded of that an awful lot this week here in New England. So, again, I think the key, as you mentioned, is neutralizing J.J. Watt. Offensively, they've done some good things, but I don't think that that's the sort of team that's going to overwhelm you, even with Hopkins and, and Blue and Hoyer, and the fact that they do some good things on offense. But, look, I think if New England ends up putting up 24 points in this thing, it should be a relatively easy win.
All right, the Patriots win. They're in the playoffs. They clinched that, obviously. I think everybody anticipates there's no drama there. The Patriots are going to be in the playoffs. But they win and the Jets lose. They will also clinch the AFC East again. And certainly that's one of those, as you like to say, one of those boxes you want to check off at the end of the season. It's the very first one, as a matter of fact. So we'll see if Patriots can get the job done in Houston on Sunday night. I'll be there, providing all the coverage on WEEI.com. Also follow Christopher Price and Ryan Hannibal on WEEI.com. Inside Gillette Stadium, he is Christopher Price. I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.